Hi,
Hello.
Mackenzie.
Hi, Sasha.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, good. Just trying to hold up through all of this, but otherwise good.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I bet.
Crazy time.
It is a crazy time. It's so crazy. But I'm glad we're getting to do this interview at least.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for not only me to get to know you better, but also everyone else. It's nice to ask like already professional dancers, so I'm excited.
Oh, thank you. Me too.
Okay, so I read up about you and I mean I knew of you before because you're a beautiful dancer. You trained at the Kirov Academy in Washington,
hmm
D.C.
hmm Yeah.
Did you train there your whole schooling or?
So I trained there the last 3 years of my schooling. So from age 13 to 16, I trained there. And I started ballet when I was 10. I grew up in Florida. So
Mhm.
I trained in my home studio in Florida called Central
Yeah.
Florida Ballet. And from there,
Mhm.
I went to the Kirov Academy and I had much more rigorous training there. It was
Yeah,
a complete change. Of course, it's Vaganova school. So
exactly.
yeah, it was a change for me, but that was what I was looking for at the time. I mean, I had class for about 5 hours a day. Like two and a
Mhm.
half hours of that was just the technique class, and then the rest was either only point or point with variations and
Mhm.
that sort of thing. So yeah, it was a big change at the time. It felt like a lot, but it was exactly what I wanted and what I needed because it made me very
Mhm.
strong. It helped me focus so much more on what I wanted to work on, and I was just in an environment with other dancers as well that pushed me and inspired me, and that was
Yeah.
also something else that I was looking for.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's like a boarding school also, so you were staying
Ex-
with all the girls together.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a boarding school. So that was another nice thing when I was growing up. It was hard for me to, once I started doing ballet more seriously, it was hard for me to fit in going to regular school, academic school,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
then drive to the ballet studio, take my class. It was getting to be too much. And in boarding school, of course, it's much easier because everything is in one building. You have more, all your
Yeah.
academic classes are catered around your ballet classes,
Mhm.
and just makes life a little bit more simple, which is nice.
Yeah. How did
Yeah.
you deal with your regular school? Because personally, it's very hard dealing with both like this pre-professional training for becoming a professional dancer and also your regular school on top of that.
Yeah, no, it is hard. It's hard to balance it all. I think I knew that I didn't want to just move away from academic school. I felt I always really
Mhm.
liked going to school. So um, it was something that was still very important to me, and I didn't put it to the side. But at the Kirov at the time, they were very good about scheduling your academic
Mhm.
classes um, so that they wouldn't interfere too much with your ballet classes. So
Yeah.
performance, or if we had something coming up, um, school would get a little bit lighter. If ballet
Mhm.
class was just a regular normal day, then school was a bit heavier. Um,
Yeah.
so it was catered very much around that, which was really nice. But when I went to public school in Florida, that was very difficult because obviously they
Yeah.
don't know what else I'm doing besides going to school. So that was really hard. I would stay up till 1, 2 in the morning finishing my homework, that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Imagine.
Yeah. It's hard to balance it all.
It is for
Yeah.
sure.
And it's important to obviously still focus on academic school, but it is hard to balance everything that you need to do.
Yeah. I believe that you did some competitions.
hmm
I think you went to Varna. How was
hmm
that experience? What did
It,
you think of it?
it was great. I went in the same summer, I went to Jackson, and then right after I went to Varna.
Mm-hmm.
And they were both really great experiences, completely different from one another, but really
Yeah, true.
great. Varna was so much fun. That's like the best way I can describe it. It's very, in a way, chaotic. You have rehearsals at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in
Yeah,
the
I've
morning.
heard.
Rehearsal. Yeah. You don't really have a proper studio to take class in or train in. You kind of have
Mm-hmm.
to figure it out. I remember I did a six potidus. Yeah, I think six
Yeah.
potidus in Varna. And, and we were trying to rehearse in a rhythmic gymnastics studio with a really slippery wood floor. There was no
Yeah.
rosin. And then the wood floor on the stage had like little nails coming out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it was super hot during the day, and if you wanted to get out on the stage, it was so hot and so sunny that it just wasn't even worth it. So it was very chaotic, but I also had the best time. I met a lot of incredible dancers. I got to
Mm-hmm.
watch them. um, I got to visit Bulgaria, which I never thought I would. That in itself was really fun. uh,
Yeah.
and Varna's really beautiful on the Black Sea. um, so yeah, it was such a fun experience. I always will remember that. It was super fun.
Mm-hmm. So you entered San Francisco Ballet right after Kirov?
Yes. So
Uh,
I was 16, and that summer I went to Jackson and I went to Varna.
mm-hmm.
And so technically I had one more year of school at Kirov,
Yeah.
but my partner that I was dancing with was a year older than me. So he
Mm-hmm.
was joining a company, and I kind of wasn't sure who. I knew that I needed to work on more potager work. I needed to keep being challenged in that way, but I wasn't
Yeah.
sure who I would dance with in school. And so just for fun, pretty much, I sent out my video, I think from Jackson, to a few companies, and
Mm-hmm.
just to see what the reaction would be like. And I got a response from the companies, but the one that really stood out for me was from San Francisco Ballet, because I was coming back from Varna, and actually it
Yeah.
was crazy because I randomly got upgraded to first class from Varna, which is
Wow.
amazing. Yeah, it was like the cherry on top at the
That's
end of the
nice. Yeah,
competition. It was
definitely.
so awesome. And yeah, I just never expected it. So it was really fun. So I had the best flight ever. I landed, and I get a call from a number that I didn't recognize, and I picked up the phone for whatever reason. Usually I don't, but I did.
Mm-hmm.
And Helgi Thomason, the artistic director
Yeah.
of Francisco Ballet, had called me personally to tell me that he had seen my video and that he wanted to invite me to take class and audition, basically. And so of course I went, and so that
Mm-hmm.
was something that I never imagined really would have happened. I kind of expected to go back to
Mm-hmm.
school one more year, but when I came to San Francisco, and he offered me a job with the company, it was something that I felt I couldn't refuse. I felt so
Yeah.
grateful for the opportunity, and the company was so incredible. It was a place that inspired me. I felt like I could grow here, and so I
Mm-hmm.
accepted the offer, and I joined the company from there. So
Wow. And how
yeah,
was that like um the difference between being in a school and in a company, like the change? What were you expecting? What shocked you?
yeah. So that was actually one of the hardest transitions ever for me. And it's
Mm-hmm.
something that I guess I don't really talk about too much because I've never had the opportunity to, but
Mm-hmm.
um, it was a super difficult transition for me to go from being a student to entering a company. I think, first of all, I had been so accustomed to having a teacher that cared
Yeah.
for me so much, and would watch me in class, would give me corrections, kind of had their eye on me. And
Yeah.
and then I went to a company of almost 80 dancers where we all took class in the same room every
Mm-hmm.
morning, and I was the youngest of all of them, so everybody ignored me. I
Yeah.
just was there doing my thing, but it's not nearly the same experience as being in
Yeah.
a school where your teacher is correcting you. um, and that was just on that level. I had a hard time kind of adjusting to that, because at the Kirov, I had never really been exposed to company life, whereas
Yeah.
students from the San Francisco Ballet School know basically how the company works. I had no idea. I really, as much as I loved ballet, I was also quite ignorant about kind of the day-to-day of what it is to be in a ballet company.
Yeah.
And so yes, it was super hard. And another thing that was hard for me, because I was in the corps, was doing core work. In school, I had always done pas de deux, I had done variations,
Yeah.
I had done basically solo work or pas de deux work, and I never had done core work. So that was something that also was challenging. It's a completely different way to work. You have to be so aware of your colleagues. You have to match them no matter what. You have to, there's no freedom for individuality, which for me is
Yeah.
really hard because I like to just kind of go with my gut when I'm on stage.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to rein that in for me, which I imagine must be for a lot of people. But
Yeah.
that was something else that took me a while to adjust to. It was not the easiest, and it made me question if I had joined the company too early, because I don't think there's ever a rush to join a company, but
Yeah.
it did make me question, what if I would have stayed in school one more year, you know, and had my teacher guiding me through one more year. So yeah, it definitely was a very challenging time. I would say my first 2 years were about the hardest adjustment period. It took me about 2 years to kind of understand how to navigate the company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, what is your favorite thing about being in a company compared to the school?
Oh, definitely my favorite, you know, now it's been such a long time since I've been in school. But,
Yeah.
My favorite thing about being in San Francisco Ballet specifically is the variety of rep that we do. I think it's a great place for dancers who are interested in exploring many, many different styles. That's also one of the biggest challenges of it. I think you're expected to do something as classical as etudes in the same program as something very contemporary. And so that can be very challenging for your body, for your mind,
Yeah, definitely.
for your psyche, everything. But I think as I've gotten older, the biggest thing that I've learned is to work for myself. And I thought that I was working for myself when I was in school, but when I joined San Francisco Ballet, I realized I wasn't. I was working for the approval of my teacher, for the approval of my colleagues, for all of these external things. And when I joined the company and realized that it's basically up to me. Sorry, it's very sunny. It's basically up to me of what I want to do. If my career is in my hands, basically.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I realized what it is to work truly for yourself, for your own benefit, and that's it. So eventually, I got to the point where I was taking class for me, for my own satisfaction of knowing that I'm working for myself, for the art form to improve, to contribute hopefully to the art form, and not so much for getting a certain role or getting a certain promotion or something.
Yeah.
So that was a huge change for me as well, as far as my mentality from school to the company. But something I do really miss about school is the time and the structure you have to take a really nice, proper ballet class. The fact that someone is really watching and caring for you and really has investment in how you do. And not that that's not true in a company, but you're much more self-sufficient in a company, especially ballet.
definitely more fast paced, and because all you're focused on is getting to that performance, which you guys perform much more than most schools do. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
do you have like a sorry?
No. Go ahead. I just said it's just a completely different structure to work. It's structured in a completely different way than from a school.
Do you have a favorite like role that you like to dance, or yeah?
It's really hard to choose just one role. I have a few. I For the longest time, my dream role was Aurora in Sleeping Beauty, and I got to do that. And it was my dream role because I had watched videos of that forever since I was a baby, basically.
Yeah.
And the music always spoke to me, and I was always in love with the first act. And so that was definitely a big dream role for me. But I also, so one of the things that I discovered at San Francisco Ballet was Balanchine's work, which I wasn't really exposed to at Kirov at the time.
Yeah.
And another role that I love dancing is Diamonds. The pas de deux of Diamonds is so gorgeous. Again, it's Tchaikovsky. Maybe it's Tchaikovsky that I like.
Yeah.
But there's a certain freedom in a way when it's a storyless ballet, because there's still a story and a meaning. It's just not overtly spoken. So you get to kind of create your own story and meaning, and I really like that freedom and that artistry. You know, a role that allows that is more appealing to me now that I'm older.
Yeah. And because now you're a principal, so what is it like being like moving up in a company? How like did it change?
So, well, like I said, when I first joined the company, I had a lot of trouble adjusting to it. So I never really even imagined that I would be here today, especially because I was having so much trouble at first. But the one thing that I am is consistent.
Yeah.
And I just kept working no matter how discouraged I felt, and no matter how many times I felt that I quote unquote failed. I just kept working through it. And I, now looking back, I never would have imagined that I would have been promoted through the ranks in the same company in San Francisco Ballet. I just thought that, I don't know what I thought, but I just never imagined I would be here. And it is a little bit of a blur now that I look back on it. It does feel like a little bit of a blur, but my hope is that it's not necessarily super common for dancers to go all the way through the ranks in the same company. It's pretty common for dancers to change companies, move, or maybe they'll start off as a certain rank in this company and then go to another company and start off there. And so I know exactly what it is like to go from being an apprentice in San Francisco Ballet to principal. I know all of those steps. And my hope is that I can serve as a pillar of support, especially to young female dancers who are joining the company and maybe are going through something similar to what I was going through when I first joined. I hope that I can be some sort of role model for them. And I believe in the value of work. If you put in proper, good work, and that's it, you will be, you will achieve what you aim out to achieve. So I hope that I can be a role model for that. But yes, it's it's so funny to think back on the person I was when I was 16, just kind of also just trying to discover who I am, because that's the other thing that I think nobody really talks about is when you're 16 or 17, you're basically just a kid.
Yeah.
Just to figure it out. Oh my gosh, it's so sunny. Let me see if I can do it. You're basically just a kid trying to figure it all out and figure out who you are. And there are so many things that go into that. You know, you're not just, you're working on your career, but also you're discovering who you are as a person, and being a well-rounded human being is just as important to your career because it allows you to be an artist.
Exactly. Yeah.
You need to live life in order to be an artist, and it's difficult to live life and be a dancer.
Yeah.
And you know, it's hard to do
For
all of those
sure.
things at once, and sometimes one takes priority over the other. So it's about having
Yeah.
patience with that, allowing your journey in that way. And looking back, I'm really grateful for the way things went in my career. It wasn't simple. It came with a lot of challenges. It was not always easy at all. But all of those challenges helped shape me and help me become the human that I am. And I hope that I just continue growing from here.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've been dancing almost all the roles. I mean, there's a lot of different ballets and different choreographers, but is there a dream role that you haven't been able to dance that you would love to?
My dream role always changes because I think I have a lot of dream roles, but I would say right now it's Tatiana in Onegin.
That is one of my favorite ballets at the moment.
It's so beautiful. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful. I got to dance Olga, which was really enjoyable as well, and I loved dancing that role. But obviously Tatiana, she has a bit more depth to her, and
Definitely.
she's a strong woman, and I would love to interpret that role. I think that would be amazing.
And alongside dance, like, because you have a very strong technique, because you trained in Vaganova and it's very difficult method. Do you do anything else like cross training or Pilates or?
So during the season when we're working a lot, I don't really have the time or the energy to cross train too much, but I do try to do Pilates about once a week, just to kind of re-engage everything, especially if I'm doing work that is kind of counterintuitive to another work that is, you know, uses different muscles. I try to bring everything back together and re-engage everything. So Pilates is the thing that I do most consistently. And I was doing some gyrotonic as well.
Yeah.
But now that we're in quarantine, I'm doing much more cross training. I'm still doing Pilates, but I also do like a general fitness workout to try to keep a little bit of cardio going, keep my muscles semi-engaged as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
In a company, you have the opportunity to like work with choreographers when they're actually choreographing. I don't know if you've had a chance to, but
yes.
How is that experience?
So I've been lucky that I've gotten to create roles in probably about, I don't know, 10 ballets maybe. I have no idea. But that is a completely different process than interpreting a role that has already been created. For one, it's almost more draining. You have to give so much of yourself because you're part of the choreographic process. So the choreographer, I mean, every choreographer has a different way to work, but there's a lot of experimentation involved. So the choreographer will need to see different versions of their idea many times until they kind of get a feel for what it is that they want to do. But one of the things that I also love about that process is that you get to influence the role.
Yeah.
Just the fact that it's created on you influences the role, whether it's certain strengths that you have technically or just your presence, your nature to dance. Some people are more lyrical, some are more explosive, some are more athletic.
Yeah.
So that is something that I really enjoy about it, because you can influence it in whatever way feels genuine and right in that moment. Of course, you respect what the choreographer is looking for, but there's inevitably a conversation between the dancer and the choreographer, and
Yeah.
it will influence the end product, which is something that I think is pretty fascinating and cool about having a work created on you.
And when you were younger, did you have any role models or dancers that you looked up to?
I had a lot of role models and dancers that I looked up to, but I wouldn't say I had one specifically that was like my top role model. I looked up to many dancers. I never had the sensation that I wanted to be exactly like one dancer or like another one. I never wanted to copy them or imitate them, but there were certain qualities about certain dancers that I found really fascinating and I gravitated towards. So, for example, with the Sleeping Beauty, when I watched the Mariinsky Sleeping Beauty, it was Larissa Lejnina at Roar, and I found her presence. At the time, I didn't understand why I was so attracted to the way that she danced, but her presence was so feminine and buoyant, especially in the first act, that I just thought she was so incredible. And now that I look at it again, it's the way that she uses her upper body, it's all the little tiny details of how she works the role that makes it that. But at the time, I didn't understand what it was. I also looked up to a lot of French ballerinas. Sylvie Guillaume, of course.
Yeah.
How can you not be fascinated by that? But Elizabeth Platel, Isabelle Garon, Natasha Makarova. Gosh, so many dancers. I can't name them all. And I feel so lucky that I've gotten to work with so many of them personally now, and they've coached me. And every time that I have that experience, I pinch myself. I just can't believe learning from the people that I would watch on YouTube. Obsessively. So it's an incredible thing. I think that's one of my favorite things about ballet, that it's passed down through generations, generally orally. You work with someone in person and they tell you what you should be doing, or they try to influence the way that you're dancing. And I think that that's such a beautiful tradition in ballet.
And I know that San Francisco, they go on tour. So what is that like?
I love going on tour. It's really fun. It can be challenging because there's a level of comfort of being in your dressing room, being on your home stage with the floor that you're very much used to, the house that you're very much used to, so you know exactly where you need to, I don't know, spot, or where the spotlights will hit you or whatever. And dancing on a different stage with a different house, with a different audience, can affect that. But I always think that that's one of the best parts about going on tour is feeling the energy of the audience and how that can change from city to city, from country to country, and how they respond to certain ballets, and how that can also change. And I think one of my favorite theaters that I got to dance in was the Châtelet in Paris, because it's so historic, and just thinking about the ballets that premiered there and were performed there before before I was dancing there, it felt very special. So that was really fun.
And I have one last question for you.
Yes.
What advice would you give to young dancers working to become or becoming a professional dancer?
It's a good question. I think looking back on my career, the advice that I would have given myself is to learn to work for myself as quickly as possible. So that's not an easy process to learn to work for yourself. That's not something that happens overnight. It's not a decision that you make and then all of a sudden you're working for yourself. But it's about focusing on the work, focusing on the art form, the betterment of the art form. So less focus on what you want to achieve and more focus on the steps to keep moving forward. I think that is something that I would have liked to hear maybe when I was younger. And knowing that it's not always going to be easy, but if you are consistent, if you work intelligently, and I believe that if you work with a pure heart, so if you work for the work and without any external kind of things that might distract you from that goal, I believe that you can achieve what you want to achieve while also growing as a human being, because I think those two things work together, or it's important to me that they work together. They need to work for ballet, but you also need to work for yourself as a human being. And so try to unite those two things as much as possible and allow yourself your journey. It's not always going to be every time you step forward. You might take a step back. You might have an injury. You might have a disappointment, but that doesn't mean that you won't be able to get where you want to get in the long run.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps it up. Thank you so much for doing this and allowing me to interview you.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Thanks for the thoughtful questions. You were great.
Of course.
Yeah. I hope you take care. I hope everyone's doing safe and healthy and doing okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.